My mother-in-law grabbed the microphone at my son's Eagle Scout ceremony before the troop committee chair had even finished calling our family up, and told 200 people that she was the one who never let him quit. My name is Jenna. My husband is Marcus. Our son Aaliyah is 17, and 3 weeks ago he became an Eagle Scout after 6 years in Troop 214, merit badges earned on freezing winter campouts, a service project rebuilding the food pantry's loading ramp, and more Saturday mornings than I can count spent driving him to a rented church basement for meetings. Marcus's mother, Lorraine, has never been to a single one of those meetings. She came to exactly 2 campout pickups in 6 years, both times to hand Aaliyah a granola bar and leave before the flag ceremony. None of that stopped her from deciding, the moment the court of honor date was set, that she would be running it. It started with the invitations. The troop mails a formal program invite to family and the merit badge counselors who worked with the scout, and I'd built a list with Marcus over a week. Close family, at least 2 best friends from the troop, and Hank, the retired contractor down the street who'd mentored Ali through his personal management and emergency preparedness badges and driven him to 3 separate merit badge clinics in his own truck because our car was in the shop that spring. Lorraine asked if she could help address envelopes, and I said sure, thinking stamps and handwriting. 2 days later I found out from a cousin's confirmation text that Lorraine had added 11 people I'd never approved, including her book club and a city council aide she met at a fundraiser, because, she told me, a boys' eagle court is exactly the kind of thing that photographs well for a young man's future. I let that go. It was extra chairs, not a real problem. The program booklet was the second sign, and this one I couldn't unsee. The troop always asks a family member to submit a short bio paragraph for the printed program, and I'd written one that mentioned Marcus and me, at least 2 scoutmasters, and Hank by name, since the troop leadership specifically likes counselors credited. When the programs arrived from the printer, mine wasn't the version used. Lorraine had emailed the committee chair her own cleaned-up paragraph 2 days after mine, describing herself as Ellie's constant support system since he joined scouting and listing her late husband's army service in detail, while Hank's name had been quietly dropped entirely. The committee chair, a volunteer with 40 other things to do, hadn't thought to check with me before swapping it. Then came the caterer. Illy had one request for the reception after the ceremony, the chocolate sheet cake from the diner on 5th Street, the one his grandfather used to take him to after every merit badge test, because it was tradition and because he genuinely doesn't like fancy food. I'd ordered it 3 weeks out. 5 days before the ceremony, I got a call from a catering company I didn't recognize, confirming a Saturday delivery of a carved ham station and a 3-tier fondant cake, booked and paid for under Lorraine's name. When I called her, she said the sheet cake felt a little modest for a young man about to shake hands with a city councilman's office, and that she'd already told her friend at the catering company it was final. I told her Illy had asked for one specific thing at his own ceremony, and she said, and I wrote this down word for word because by then I had started writing things down, he's 17. He doesn't know yet what impresses people who matter. That sentence sat with me for days, the same way it must sit with every daughter-in-law who's ever heard some version of it. Not because it was shouted, Lorraine never shouts, but because of the yet. Like every choice Illy had made about his own achievement was a draft she intended to correct before anyone important saw it. I mentioned it to Marcus. He did the thing he does when his mother comes up, a long exhale followed by "I'll talk to her," which by that point in our marriage I understood to mean a conversation would happen and nothing would change. I told him this time I needed it to actually land. He said he would handle it. 2 days later Lorraine called the troop committee chair directly, not me, not Marcus, to ask whether her brother, a retired Army Colonel Ali had met perhaps 4 times in his life, could be the one to pin on Ali's Eagle badge instead of Hank, since family should really be the one doing that part. That request is what moved me from annoyed to something colder. The badge pinning isn't decoration. The troop lets the scout choose who does it, and Ali had asked Hank back in the spring, quietly, the way 17-year-old boys ask for things that actually matter to them, sideways, almost embarrassed, like it was no big deal when it very much was. Hank had said yes and then gone out and bought a new tie. When the committee chair mentioned Lorraine's call to me, thinking it was a nice family gesture I'd want to know about, I had to explain that Ali's choice had already been made, and that no one had the standing to change except Ali. By the week of the ceremony, I had stopped pretending this was Lorraine being enthusiastic. I started a folder, not out of any plan, at first, just somewhere to put the parts of this I couldn't say out loud without sounding unhinged. I printed the catering confirmation with her name on it. I saved the emailed program bio side by side with mine in a manila sleeve. I wrote down, that same night, exactly what she'd said about Ali not knowing what impresses people who matter, in case my memory softened it later the way memory does. I clipped it all to an old aluminum clipboard from the garage that used to hold Marcus's work orders, because it felt less dramatic than a binder and I could carry it under one arm like it was nothing. I called the caterer and canceled the ham station, told them the card on file would need to dispute the charge with Lorraine directly since it wasn't my account, and confirmed the diner's sheet cake delivery myself. I called Hank to make sure he still had his tie ready and hadn't heard anything different from anyone. I did not call Lorraine. I let that silence sit for 3 days, the way she'd let her decisions sit on me for 3 weeks, and I told myself I wasn't angry. I was just done asking her to stop and instead simply stopping her. The ceremony was held in the same church basement where Ali had earned half his badges, strung with the troop's own faded bunting and a folding table of patrol flags, nothing fancy, exactly the way Ali liked it. He wore his dress uniform with the sash he'd sewn badges onto himself over 6 years, and he kept checking that Hank had actually arrived, twice, before the flag ceremony even started. Lorraine arrived early, in a suit, with a leather portfolio I hadn't seen before, and positioned herself in the front row on the aisle before Marcus and I could sit there, which meant when the committee chair called the Eagle Scouts family forward, she stood up first. The ceremony itself went the way Ali deserved for most of it. His scoutmaster read the Eagle charge. His 2 best friends from the troop presented the flags without dropping either one, which had clearly been a source of real anxiety for both of them. Hank stepped forward when it was time for the badge, and Ali's face did something I will remember for the rest of my life, a kind of steady, grateful relief, like the one part of the day he'd actually been worried about had gone exactly right. Then the committee chair opened the floor for a few words from family, meaning, by long tradition, one short blessing from a parent or grandparent. Lorraine was up and at the podium before Marcus had fully risen from his chair. She spoke for almost 5 minutes. The first was fine, generic, the kind of grandmother sentiment nobody minds. Then she pivoted, the way she always pivots, and said that she wanted to be honest, for Ali's sake, that there had been more than one point over the past 6 years when this family had nearly let him quit scouting, and that she was the one who'd called, who'd pushed, who'd kept the fire lit when other people's schedules got in the way. She said she'd taken the liberty, given her connections, of arranging for Ali to intern with the city councilman's office that fall, so a young man with this kind of character has the credentials to match, and that she hoped, moving forward, she'd be brought into the bigger decisions about Ali's future the way she clearly should have been from the start. The room did the specific kind of quiet a room does when 200 people who don't know each other all notice the same wrong thing at once. I looked at Ali. He was staring at his own hands, jaw tight, the exact look he'd had at 11 when a coach benched him for a game he'd trained for all season and he didn't know yet that he was allowed to be angry about it. I didn't raise my voice, and I want that on record because I've replayed that afternoon more times than I can count, and I'm proud of exactly how I did this part. I stood up, walked to the podium, and set the clipboard down where everyone could see the manila sleeve clipped to it. I said Lorraine's name once, to get the room's attention back from wherever she'd taken it, and told her, and ever one, that I'd started keeping notes 3 weeks ago because I'd stopped trusting my memory of our conversations and started trusting paper instead. I read the caterer's confirmation, the ham station booked under her name 5 days before the ceremony, the one I'd personally canceled to keep the one thing Ellie had actually asked for. I read the program bio, hers next to the one I'd submitted, and pointed out that Hank's name, the man who had just pinned Ellie's badge 30 minutes earlier, at Ellie's own request, had been the one name Lorraine's version left out. Then I said, evenly, that Ellie had never once been close to quitting scouting, that I had the sign-in sheets from 6 years of meetings to prove who'd actually been in that basement every week, and that no internship arranged without asking a 17-year-old first was a gift. It was a decision made about him instead of with him. Lorraine's mouth opened and nothing came out, which in 11 years of marriage I had genuinely never seen happen to her before. Marcus stood up from his seat and walked to stand next to me at the podium instead of next to his mother, and that, more than anything I'd read off the clipboard, was what made the room exhale. From somewhere in the back, one of the other scout dads muttered, not quietly, Hank drove that kid to 3 merit badge clinics in his own truck, let's not do this, and a ripple of quiet, awkward agreement moved through the folding chairs. Lorraine left before the cake was cut, telling the committee chair on her way out that she'd been blindsided in front of the whole troop, which struck exactly no one who'd actually watched the last 20 minutes as an accurate description of events. Marcus drove to her house that night, alone, and told her the internship comment was the line, that if she wanted a relationship with Ellie's future going forward, it would go through Ellie, and then us, not around all 3 of us to a city councilman's office we'd never heard of until she announced it from a podium. Ellie, for his part, barely mentions the toast when he tells people about that day. He talks about Hank pinning the badge exactly the way he'd asked. He talks about the sheet cake, and how 3 of his troop's younger scouts asked him what it actually takes to make Eagle, and how good it felt to actually know the answer. I kept the clipboard anyway, tucked in the hall closet, not because I expect to need it again anytime soon, but because that Saturday taught me something about the space between the story a person tells about a family and the paper trail of what actually happened in it, and I intend to keep both close, in case Lorraine ever needs reminding which one is true.